Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Watch the games last night. They were both very good, weren't they? Well,
What
Madrid.
game did you watch?
I watched Real on one TV and Salah firing on the other TV. Then I think this is great.
Nice. I had him triple captain as well, so
Just been going through the Europa League and Conference League games for tonight, and there's a derby, isn't it? Looks prime for cards, and they've got Turpin in charge of it. His last two Champions League games, he hasn't dished a card out.
it's a waste.
I'm probably going to do it anyway. For this, there'll be none. It's 5-1 for 3 cards each. Purely just let it go, mate. Just make it happen.
That's unfortunate. You want one of these like nutty Bulgarian refs or something that,
Yeah.
not too bothered about getting in their pocket. You don't want him on one of those games. That is a waste.
Yeah. Bit heartbreaking.
I was at Kenilworth Road last night.
Did you get down for it? Yeah.
Oh,
Interesting. The first time I've ever been. Interesting stadium.
Did you have to go through someone's bedroom or shimmy across a curtain pole?
Yeah,
To get
pretty
in.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I love those kind of grounds though. Like, those grounds with like a bit of character. Like I like QPR as well.
Yeah.
Because that's also a bit rough and ready. And
Turf Moor's my favourite. I love Turf Moor.
turf. Never been.
If there's like a cricket ground right by it, so if you get them and the weather's decent, so like play them like April, May, then there's like a decent bar just off the cricket ground, and if there's a game on, it's amazing. And obviously everything's cheap as you can be. It's perfect.
I'd imagine the weather's not usually decent.
Yeah, I've caught two
though.
sunny days in Burnley, so that might have been the only 2 sunny days in the last decade.
Last decade, yeah.
But that just sounds cold. Burnley, Turf Moor, yeah.
Cold at Wolves is cold. I don't know what I went to Wolves about 10, 15 years ago. My God. Because it's quite a strange away end because it's like right in front. It's like the full length of the pitch, isn't it? Usually
Yeah.
you're stuck away in a corner. Wolves is like carries the entire stand, lower tier.
The we can't mention cold grounds without mentioning the Britannia. The Britannia was
That is a cold ground as well.
I've only ever been there once, and the hailstones took the players off the pitch for 5 minutes. Ashley Young scored. It was a League Cup, I believe, midweek.
That sounds horrible. That's
Yeah, it was
proper
pretty-
football, that. Hailstones at the Britannia.
Yeah, the players off the pitch for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, that was the classic. Can you do it on a cold Tuesday night in Stoke sort of thing?
That is it.
Shame
Yeah.
Messi never felt the need to prove that point.
Howard.
Not too late. Right. What are we talking about?
Probably be quite a quick one, really.
Fine with that.
Yeah, fine with that.
Cardiff Argyle will be a massive one.
Good game.
That's obviously Argyle home, because I remember you being
Yeah.
in Cardiff for the Plymouth game. Yeah.
I was in Cardiff Popworld till about 5 a.m.
Good Popworld.
Yeah,
So I have fond memories of that away there.
I think you got hammered, didn't you? Was it 5?
I think it was 5. I saw 3 goals, but I think it was 5-0.
That's
Yeah, we had some.
It's the
sent off as
perfect
well.
away day in Cardiff, because you just get to leave early then and just go out.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Bugger the football. Go 3-0 down and straight to town.
Popworld, though, questionable.
Yeah, very questionable, but
Oh, mate, Cardiff Popworld's pretty good. I won't need a bad word against that.
it's not the worst Popworld I've been in. So
No, I've been in some worse Popworld.
the one in Plymouth, I don't know if it still has it, but it has like a revolving dance floor.
Hell
Have you seen
yes.
them before?
No, I haven't been.
Or is that just a Plymouth thing? Yeah, it has a revolving dance floor, honestly. Like, go
Yeah.
really slowly, but yeah. Mikel Marino as well. After last week,
yeah, that's great.
I knew he'd score as soon as
I was so annoyed.
dug him out a little bit.
I bet it on Paddy at 6s and cashed it out, obviously, because he wasn't starting.
Rough. He'll start this week, I reckon.
Up front.
Yeah, it'll just put him straight up.
He's better in the air than Havertz. Well, I like Havertz, but Havertz isn't exactly a great header of the ball. He squanders so many, whereas Marino, got a bit about him. Like, the power he generated on that header was class.
It's really
It's
good
a
in the air.
It's a really small sample size, but everything suggests he's like the best Premier League striker ever. Like,
All time.
did he have
That
2
goal
shots?
return.
Yeah.
He had 2 shots,
I
yeah.
think he did.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really
What can you say?
fault that.
His non-penalty XG per 90 was solid from midfield, so Salah better watch his back here.
Is there enough time?
There's 12 games to go, 13 games to go.
Just jumped on to have a look at his shots, but he is priced like a centre forward, unfortunately.
He is, yeah.
So it's like 1.16 for 2 shots. See to score.
Best I can see was about 3.5, but that was a couple of days ago.
Really not bad. Should we record a pod?
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably
better
should.
lads.
Yeah. After a few failed late fitness tests, we're down to the bare bones on the pod this week. But that won't stop our betting experts from offering up their very best selections for the upcoming weekend before a once-in-a-blue-moon event, me tipping on the Tipping Podcast. All that and more on today's show. Hello and welcome to the Football Betting Pod powered by Betting Expert. I'm your host, Daniel Jenkins, joined as ever by Betting Expert's football editor, Sam Ingram. How are we doing, Sam?
Hello, Dan. Very well. How are you?
I'm good. We spoke earlier in the week about your little trip, Plymouth versus QPR. How was it?
Luton.
Sorry, Plymouth versus Luton. Sorry, mate.
It was, yeah, Kenilworth Road. It's my first time there. Interesting little ground. Very interesting, but it was good. It was good. At 12,000 capacity, I thought it would be a little bit more than that. Obviously in the Premier League last year as well. And it really it felt like 12,000 as well. But yeah, lovely little ground. I'll definitely go back. Good away day.
Yeah. Quality of the football. League
Not so
One,
good.
League Two.
Yeah, no, not so good. A lot of like lumping it up to strikers and into kind of centre backs to head away and downfield. So not the best spectacle, but Argyle left with a point, and I think most Argyle fans would have snatched at that before a ball was kicked last night. So good result for Argyle, not a very good result for Luton. It's looking real grim for Luton.
Yeah, going 1-0 up as well. Can't be good.
Yeah.
Also on the show today, Scott Thornton back again. How we doing, man?
All good. I didn't treat myself to Luton versus Plymouth. I watched the Champions League instead. So,
Real Madrid versus Manchester City. Yeah.
Same sort of quality level, but
Similar outcome. Okay,
yeah,
good stuff. Man down for the pod this week, no Daniele, and nobody else to really cover. So stick with the 3-man, but that, as I said in the opening, that does mean that for the pod treble, I'm going to have to dust off my tipping skills, which is not something I do very often anymore. But yeah.
Your last tip, remember your last tip was in like what's it called now? The Checker Trade Trophy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it Wigan Arsenal or something like that?
It was Wigan versus Forest under 20.
Wigan Forest.
it was like on that night as well. It was the first one.
Wigan
and
under 21s.
It went down, didn't it? It went down. So at least now, if this treble gets to your bet, that's the last bet, I believe, and we can all watch the biggest game of the weekend with some incentive. Well, further incentive.
Yeah, I've learned from last time not to put the first selection of a treble maybe like 5 days before the other picks.
Yeah,
so,
wise.
Yeah, we'll get to that at the end. But yeah, Sam, do you want to kick us off with your first bet of the show?
Yeah, I'm going into the Championship. It's Swansea versus Blackburn, and I've ended on Blackburn on the draw no bet line, plus 0.0 at 2.10 on Bet365. Blackburn played Plymouth Argyle last week, and they impressed me against Argyle last Saturday. They recorded their second 2-0 scoreline under interim management in David Lowe. They beat West Brom 2-0 at the Hawthorns in the first game of the post-John Eustace era before that. And these two clubs here on Saturday, two clubs with now very different objectives. For Swansea, their primary focus, you'd have to say, is avoiding relegation. They lost to Stoke on the weekend, and they've also had their concerns about the drop. So to go 1-0 up against Stoke and then to lose 3-1 away from home, it's not ideal for Swansea. And since that Stoke game, Swansea have sacked Luke Williams after 13 months in charge, and he ended his time at Swansea with 7 defeats in 8 fixtures, heading into Blackburn's visit in Swansea on Saturday. And if you put up those kind of numbers in the Championship, 7 defeats in 8, then it usually means that a change at managerial level isn't too far away. And now the club simply have to get the next appointment right. We were saying off air that they've got their managerial appointments so right for so many years, Swansea, and it feels like this one might be the biggest of the lot. They are at the wrong end of the table, and the competition down at that end of the table will be fierce right up until the final day of the season. But if results continue the way they're going, then Swansea will be slap bang in trouble. They're 8 points from safety at the minute, which is a fair old chunk, and I think they'll probably be okay, but not if they don't stop the rot in terms of the consecutive losses we're seeing at the minute. in Swansea this season, only Hull have returned fewer points at home than Swansea. I'm just not sure whether getting rid of Luke Williams is going to see an instant change in fortunes in terms of results. Like with that mounting pressure and the need for a result here on Saturday, I think Swansea might just struggle against a really handy Championship side. And Blackburn, they're in a good vein of form. Obviously, John Eustace is left, but I think now they're in a position where they're out to prove a bit of a point. Their manager, really, really decent manager at Championship level, has decided to swap a playoff chase with Blackburn and head to a relegation dogfight with Derby, and that raises some eyebrows. It has to. So there's a set of players and coaches there that I think will be out to prove a point. And I think with a draw on a side, on the draw no bet line at odds against, I think that's a pretty interesting way into this game. And at 2.70 for the win in the Championship, it was the one price that really stood out to me on the weekend. It's probably been a bit too big.
Yeah, it's a big couple of days, probably a couple of weeks for Swansea City. As you said, Sam, it's not looking good table-wise. They are sliding towards the relegation zone. But yeah, as we said, they've nailed the managerial appointments over the past probably 15, 20 years. I'd say they've had far, far, far more hits than misses. But yeah, this is a very, very big one. Looking at Blackburn a little bit more specifically for this tip, Sam, they've done well since John Eustace has left, found some good form, beaten Plymouth. Are you concerned that maybe Swansea do maybe not get somebody in before the game kicks off, because that seems very unlikely now at the time of recording on Thursday, but maybe somebody's sort of penciled in, maybe the players have been told, maybe there is a sort of vision being put in place, and all of a sudden a bit more of a solidified setup for Swansea City at home in front of that home crowd, which, you know, can be pretty good at times. I consider maybe the things don't look as settled for Blackburn, and their temporary manager doesn't really look like as good of a setup, but as good of a move going forward.
Yeah, Dan, I suppose that's the concern, and maybe one of the concerns, excuse me, going into the game is that with Luke Williams going, is that now going to get a few of the players, a few of their tails up, and maybe a few of the personnel in that change room like really wanted him gone, and now they can go out there and express themselves and, you know, play with the freedom we sometimes see with a managerial change. But there's a lot of ifs and buts there. And I think in terms of the Asian handicap with the draw on side, I think the draw maybe covers that a little bit. If this was Blackburn Rovers on a minus handicap, I probably wouldn't have took it, because there's a few variables here that, yeah, you're right, that we can't really factor in. But like I said, yeah, this Rovers team, they are dealing with adversity at the minute. The managers jumped ship. They're going to want to prove a point, not only to themselves, but to the rest of the league that he's probably made a big mistake. And I think that kind of drive and a bit between like a team's teeth as a collective, I think that can really work in their favour if they harness it. And if they're able to lock into that kind of like us versus everyone else type of mentality, like we saw with Jose Mourinho, Chelsea, and Jose Mourinho pretty much everywhere he's gone. If they can like harness that, I think Blackburn Rovers can end up having a profitable season with or I should say with or without John Eustace. It's going to be without now. But I think under John Eustace, yeah, I think everyone would have probably looked at it and thought they've got more of a chance of ending in the playoffs. But now, I don't know. I think they might just be fine. And I don't think we should forget either, like, John Eustace has jumped ship after a January transfer window where Blackburn have added real quality in forward areas. Like, yeah, they might not be permanent signings. They might be on loan, but Emmanuel Dennis and Cauley Woodrow, they're yet to play a Championship minute for Blackburn, and they are two lads that can really have an impact on games at this level. And Cauley Woodrow, like, fantastic striker of a ball. Emmanuel Dennis gets goals at this level. Two players that can impact games, whether that's from the start here on Saturday or off the bench. That could prove to be the difference. Like, they have that quality up top. And yeah, like I said, Dan, like the 2.70, 2.75 to win the game on Saturday in Swansea, considering the slide that Swansea are in, considering the mess they're in at the minute, it just looked a little big. And yeah, Blackburn's last away day at the Hawthorns, big game. I think it was 5th v 6th when they took on West Brom, dealt with that brilliantly. Left with a 2-0 win. Turn up the weekend after, beat Argyle really, really comfortably, and now head into Swansea with the draw on side. Yeah, I'm happy to get on that.
Yeah, Betsy's making it an absolute pick'em. Swansea projected 1.40, Blackburn projected 1.39. I'm very surprised to see Swansea as favourites for this game. I'm really surprised by the line. Betsy's giving it the goal difference of literally 0. Bookie's putting it, giving Swansea 1.82 for a +0. So certainly favouring Swansea a little bit more. Bookie's just favouring Swansea a little bit more than Betsy is. I don't see why. I don't see how, considering the state of the two clubs at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I was coming at it from. So I go through, but before I look at the championship prices, I'll go through the whole schedule and just jot down what I think the prices are going to be. And for this one, I had Blackburn as very slight favourites. Like, I don't think there's much in it, but I think maybe a couple points favourites. And yeah, to see that Swansea, to see there's a bit of daylight in between the two in favour of Swansea, it just doesn't feel right. Like, I could be wrong. They could come out absolutely flying, wanting to prove a point in front of home support and put the Luke Williams stuff behind them and look forward and get a result. But just at the prices, I think you have to side with Blackburn, and to get the draw no bet on side at odds against it seems like the right way to go.
6 defeats from 7 for Swansea City in the Championship. Obviously changed managers, temporary manager in charge for this match as the search goes on for a permanent successor. But yeah, I'm not confident, to be entirely honest. Sam's first bet of the show, Blackburn +0 in the Asian handicap market. That's a 2.10. Are you doing a full unit on that, Sam?
Yeah, will be.
Good stuff. And Scott, over to you for your first pick from the Premier League.
Yep, so into the Premier League, we got Newcastle versus Forest, and we're backing both teams to score an over 22.5 shots in the match. Last week, I was really surprised by Newcastle, just how toothless they were. We spoke about this before we started the show. I think we're just really flat. City were very good and improved, in fairness. I think it's important to give them some credit. I think we need to see a response from Newcastle here. They're still very much in the race for the top 4, and beating Forest would be a real statement in the sense that Forest are third now. Newcastle also lost their last 2 home games, conceding 6 goals. Both teams have scored dead land in both of those matches. But it's all geared up for a Newcastle response, and I think we'll see plenty of attacking output. But they face a Forest side, they're dangerous in their own right. Obviously, Chris Wood is he's playing his way into a move to Barcelona, I think, to replace Lewandowski at some stage.
He's almost as good as Mikel Merino up top. Almost.
Yeah,
nearly there. The goal per minute average just needs to be worked on a little bit.
As a striker, Merino's obviously one of the most clinical forwards in the history of the Premier League, maybe even the most clinical at this stage. That'll continue this week, no doubt. Yeah, back to the bets. Forest have scored 1.75 and conceded 1.25 on average in the league. So both teams scored. Does look like a handy bet there. They've got 1 clean sheet in their last 5. 4.4 goals on average in those games. Okay, they've been helped by a 5-0 defeat and a 7-0 win, but the defence and attack are still outputting those numbers, and we're backing both teams to score this time. If we're going to see plenty of goal mouth action, over 22.5 shots should be very, very doable. They were 26 in the reverse fixture earlier in the season, and Newcastle home matches have seen an average of 28.25 shots, so that's well above the requirement of 22.5 here. Forest away matches again, 26.77 shots on average. So I'm hoping for 2 teams that really do have a lot to play for. Forest will know they need to finish the season strongly if they are going to consolidate their place in that top 4. Newcastle need to respond. Can't really envisage them losing 3 games on the bounce at home, to be honest. So they really need to respond and put in a good performance. And I think we'll see 2 very, very good teams that are chasing Europe go at it, hammer and tongs, and we should see an entertaining game.
Yeah, Newcastle haven't lost 3 consecutive Premier League home matches since January to February 2021. So would certainly be a surprise. I think, yeah, another important fixture for Newcastle in what has been a really important run for them. Same for Nottingham Forest as well. Like these going back to maybe a couple of weeks ago within the next couple of weeks, this period is really important in kind of settling who we think is going to be finishing in the top 4 and the top 5, isn't it? We saw Newcastle Man City last week, and Now, Forest versus Newcastle. So, Scott, I think at the moment, I want to focus on Forest for now because obviously they're on that fantastic run around December time, early January. But I think after that Liverpool game, the 1-1 draw, I feel like they've been a little bit sort of hot and cold, a little bit emotional as a team, Nottingham Forest. Like we're not really sure what we're going to see from them, and they can get a little bit set in their ways. Obviously, they lost 5-0 at Bournemouth, then beat Brighton 7-0. Very nearly squandered a 3-goal lead against Southampton at home in that run as well. Needed extra time to beat Exeter in the FA Cup, and then going down 2-1, quite a limp performance against Fulham last time out. So for this bet, are you concerned that maybe we just don't see Forest show up at all? Or which Forest show up? Because they could quite easily go and win 3-0 at St James's Park, or they could quite easily lose 4-0 the way they're playing.
Yeah, it was something that I considered because obviously they have been so hot and cold to us. I think it's just the 2 wins in their last 6 across all comps. Obviously, if we include Exeter as a draw, they won on penalties eventually, didn't they? I just think that he's galvanised the squad there. They're all behind the manager, and this is one of those games that it's such a big moment in the season. I think it's one we could look back on. And if they are to go and get a result here, a win even, I think that could be what gives them the kick to go on and finish in the top 4. The head-to-head date, there was another point of sort of comfort when I was looking at the bet, with the fact that both teams have scored in the last 5 games between the sides. But they're averaging 3.6 goals, and I just think both teams to score again, given the magnitude of the fixture and the fact that 3 points is probably needed for both teams, really. I don't think either would be happy with a draw. So obviously we're hoping for a nice early goal. Let's avoid that cagey start, but I do think he'll open up at some stage regardless. 3 points is definitely what's needed for both.
Yeah, Betsy projected goal total for this game is 2.54 with just 0.87 projected goals for Nottingham Forest. It's the second lowest of any team in the Premier League in this upcoming slate of matches, behind West Ham's trip to Arsenal. So looking at Newcastle, Scott, are you expecting a bit of a comeback from them, bit of a bounce back after last week's hammering at City, which surprised us all, I think?
I think we'll see more in the way of attacking intent, but I just don't think they'll correct all the defensive issues. Obviously conceding 4, I know it's not the same City, but at the Etihad isn't the worst thing in the world. But then chipping 2 against Fulham, at home to Fulham in the last game, and then 4 against Bournemouth. Bournemouth, okay, underlying metrics are fantastic, but you probably shouldn't be shipping 4 goals at home to Bournemouth when you're chasing Champions League. So I think we'll see a response in terms of their attacking output. Isak will obviously want to return to score in ways, but I don't see the defensive issues being solved. And Forest have scored in most of their away games of late. I think they've got Bournemouth away is the only one they haven't scored in the last 6, and they've scored at least 2 in 4 of those games. That's league matches on the road. So I just think Forest will give it a good go.
Yeah, 11 goals conceded for Newcastle in the last 4 Premier League games. Plenty of opportunities here for both teams to get on the score sheet, which is the sort of route that Scott's gone down here, which is both teams to score and over 22.5 shots in Newcastle versus Nottingham Forest. That's a 1.86 with a full unit on it. Do we want to take 5 minutes to slap each other on the back for a pod treble win? Just about win last week. Well done, everyone.
Yeah, it was a win. It was a win. So the half odds winner on the Monza game, wasn't it?
Yes.
So that comes out at 1.3 if I remember rightly. So
yeah,
take what we can get.
So
Bournemouth -1 against Southampton. It was a 1.92. I think it was yours, Sam, wasn't it? That landed both teams to score. Yes, Crystal Palace versus Everton at evens. Scott's came in, and then Daniele went for Monza plus 0.25 Asian handicap market, which, yeah, as you said, half win. So that brings the treble odds down just above 4.0. So nice little win. And if you go back to the start of the season, since we've been doing these pod trebles, if you do a single unit stake for all of the singles and a quarter of a unit stake for all of the trebles, it's an overall profit of plus 3.48 ROI. So pretty good.
When was the first treble? The treble would have been maybe
6th of November 2024.
Oh, was it? November,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've had a fair few. What's that? 13 14 of them so far. So
Yeah,
done well.
I think
done
we've
well,
all
still in
found our
profit.
feet with there as well, with what works and what we tend to get lucky with.
Yeah, I would hate to have to come in and provide a pick after a pod treble win. If it's not something I've been doing regularly, that would be awful.
That would be
I'd hate
really
to do that.
difficult. Really
Yeah.
difficult, especially if you haven't really tipped for a while, at least publicly.
Yeah,
I was
that would be
surprised
scary.
Pressure would be on.
I was
Pressure would
surprised
be
that
on.
Dan didn't pick someone that was going off a 5:45 in the Conference League tonight, just to
It's
get the
already
pressure
finished,
on.
Scott. Did you see? It's already finished. Just to recap the profit loss of the overall tips as well. So for season 2, so since the start of this season on the pod, overall ROI is plus 1.17%. Sam, individually for season 2, your ROI is plus 5.65%, which is very nice. Overall total for the show is plus 3.69%. And Sam, your overall ROI for all of your track bets is plus 11.88%. Very tasty. Very well done.
Yeah, take that.
So, yeah, no pressure. But Sam, do you want to give us your second tip, Mr. 11%?
I've gone to the Premier League, and you know what, Dan? This is a weird weekend. We get a few of these in the Premier League season. Like, I think I could have come on here and made a case for like 8 Premier League bets on the main market. So if we'll quickly go through them, Brentford away at Leicester, odds against to win. Don't know, that seems fairly obvious to me. Everton v United, draw no bet Everton. Arsenal West Ham, not keen on those prices. Bournemouth to win on the handicap in some way. Fulham at home to Palace, odds against. Tottenham away at Ipswich, nearly evens. They got a few players coming back, and people won't be too keen on that, but it's a good enough price. My bet is going to be Brighton on the Asian handicap away at Southampton. And you could also make a case for Villa on the draw no bet against Chelsea as well. So there's a lot of games where if it feels maybe a little bit trappy, there's a lot of like maybe accumulator fodder there that you could chuck into a treble or fourfold and so on. But I've ended up on Brighton -1 at 2.02, and this is more it's the same as the Bournemouth bet last week. This is more a play against Southampton. Bournemouth went off at 1.48 last week, and deservedly so. Brighton can be back to around 1.60 at the minute. And earlier on in the season, in the most recent head-to-head, Brighton went off at 1.38 with home advantage. That was in November, and that game ended 1-1. And Brighton probably should have won the game in terms of the quality of chances. I think they had 3 big chances to 0. The concern here, back in Brighton, away from home, is that they've conceded 24 goals on the road this season. And only Leicester and Wolves have a worse record. But we should bear in mind that 7 of those goals came in Nottingham a few weeks ago. And that's a result they bounced back from. Brighton beat Chelsea in back-to-back games in the league and the cup recently, and both deserved wins. That will have given this group a level of belief, you would say. And before that Forest game, actually, Brighton beat United 3-1 at Old Trafford, Ipswich 2-0 at Portman Road, and they dismantled Norwich at Carrow Road. I can't remember the score. Maybe it was around 3-0, 4-0. So bar that Forest disaster, because it was absolutely terrible. It was one of those days where everything just went wrong for them, on top of Forest being overly clinical. Brighton haven't lost an away game, bar that, since mid-December. So like I said, this is an anti-Southampton stance. They are statistically one of the worst Premier League teams ever so far. Their expected goals against total stands at 66.87 after 25 Premier League games, which is 2.67 XGA per 90. So chances will be afforded to Brighton here, and you would expect 1 or 2 to go in, considering what we've seen all season from Southampton and like the Bournemouth -1 bet last weekend. Feels like one of the more obvious bets in the Premier League this weekend, but sometimes it is as easy as that. I don't think we need to overcomplicate it here. Brighton are a much better team, in better form. Southampton, not so much. So, yeah, I won't complicate things, and I'll just go for Brighton -1 at odds against.
Yeah, looks good. Brighton potentially having a few players coming back from injury this week as well. Lewis Dunk missed out last week, didn't he? He should be back for the weekend. Bivers to pin out as well, and Solly March as well could be coming back in. So much improved.
Three big
Brighton.
players as well.
Yeah,
You can get 6.39 on Bet365 if you oppose the newly promoted team. So obviously the away treble against the newly promoted 3, Tottenham, Brentford, and Brighton.
Could be a better pod treble than what we're going to offer up at the end of the show.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most probably.
No, winning the pod treble will go down.
Not too late to change your selection, I suppose. On this one, Sam, Southampton are pretty bad. You're right to say they're one of the worst teams we've seen in the Premier League for a while. Underlying data is awful for them.
God.
Looking at Betsy, I think this probably leads a little bit more into Brighton's recent defensive performances, but Betsy projected them 1.16 goals for this match, which quite punchy, I think, with Brighton going off at 1.81. So expecting a fairly high scoring match, both teams scoring, Brighton coming out on top. Expect to see that maybe. But looking into the not so distant future, are you just going to be kind of opposing Southampton if this keeps coming in? Do you think the bookies are kind of overrating them a little bit? Are they worse than maybe the data suggests?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. Last week, like we spoke about it on the pod last week, Bournemouth were priced up at 1.72, weren't they, away at Southampton, and it's just the miles away from where I saw the two teams. So yeah, I think you're right. Maybe they're not realizing just how bad or just how incapable of getting results over the line that this Southampton team is. It is one of the worst we've ever seen. And I think sometimes, like, when you have a team that is so good, or in this case, not very good, maybe you don't quite realize like how bad or good those teams are until maybe a year or two down the line, when you can, look back and you have that kind of, you have that hindsight, you have a full season to look over, and you can like maybe dig into it a little better. But when it's actually happening, maybe that's not so obvious. And I think maybe that's what we've got here. And now they welcome a Brighton team with, like you said, big players coming back. To be fair, I thought I dug him out a little bit on last week's pod. I think Adam Webster had a really good game against Chelsea. He came in for Lewis Dunk. Wasn't really expecting that. So even if Dunk doesn't play, then Webster's in good form too. Mitoma, that goal last week, unbelievable.
Amazing. The first touch was ridiculous, honestly.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And then I think it was his third touch to like take it away from the defender, and then obviously his shot as well. It was just brilliant. Jorginho Ruta as well. He's one of my favourite footballers in the Premier League. Love watching him. And João Pedro as well. Like, they've got a lot of attacking components that are going to cause Southampton some, what's the word? Concern, I suppose. Yeah. I don't think they'll be able to keep them all at bay. And that's what it comes down to for me. Southampton, not good at defending. Brighton, good in attack. Southampton experiencing a bout of miserable, prolonged form. And they don't quite have the players to compete at Premier League level. Destined for relegation, morale on the floor. Like, there's a lot of reasons to oppose this Southampton team. And Brighton under Hertzler, it's a world away from what we see in Southampton. They're only 6 points off fifth. Yeah, 6 points off fifth. And fifth place is going to be enough for Champions League football next season. So they have to they simply have to win these games for any hope of that. And I think they'll do so. What's the price? Odds against for the Asian handicap.
Southampton conceded 3 goals at home to Man United. Okay, it was early in the season, but any team that does that, they're going to be concerned with any sort of attacking lineup in front of them, really.
Yeah, I think last week against Bournemouth as well, it could have been a few more. I think Aaron Ramsdale had a couple of really, really good saves to keep it at 3. It's not the best squad we've seen. I think there are some half-decent players in this Southampton team. I think Fernandez is pretty good. Onuachu's pretty good. It's just, do you really expect them to have the final product to really get on the score sheet and start threatening teams and start winning matches? Because absolutely not.
That's it, Dan. Like, this isn't an agenda or anything against Southampton. In the summer, they simply didn't recruit well enough. They didn't recruit Premier League ready talent to compete at the level, and that's showing now. It's not that I don't like Southampton or anything like that. It's just that they just don't have the squad to do so. And to be fair, I was saying exactly the same about Leicester City in the summer, and that's kind of proving true as well. They just didn't recruit well enough. It was all a bit slapdash, especially for Leicester City. They left it really late, ended up getting in Oddison Edouard from Crystal Palace, doesn't even play. Jamie Vardy's playing every game up top. That's a shambles as well. Southampton are quite similar. They didn't do well enough in the summer. Their kind of squad planning from Championship to Premier League wasn't good enough for the level, and yeah, it looks like they'll bounce straight back down or bounce down,
Just fall
down.
or
Yeah,
slide,
they'll fall right down again, and they'll have a great squad to compete in the Championship next season. They'll probably come up and then probably go back down again, unless they start getting their recruitment right, because they've got a really good coach there. I don't know if he's going to be there for the long haul, but if they can keep him, if he can galvanise that group of players, and he can get some of his own signings in, and yeah, maybe they'll have a good go at the Premier League in 2 years' time. But this season, it's not going to happen.
Do you think either Van Nistelrooy or Juric will be there next season?
Probably not. No.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Strange appointments midway, especially with, well, Steve Cooper didn't exactly need to go. I know the fans just didn't really like him, which is fair enough. It is what it is. But the Juric appointment was strange, so that they're already down, basically.
Yeah, I think with Juric, I think the idea was to get him in, and in terms of like the defensive structure, like stabilise him a little bit, stop them conceding goals. I could understand why they brought him in, but I think for me, the Van Nistelrooy one was the strangest one. Like, it's really not what they needed. He didn't have the required experience, did all right with PSV, but yeah, I'm not sure why he was top of their list. Was it because of those like 3 or 4 games at United? Well, it must have been, because without those like 3 or 4 games, I doubt he would have been top of their list. So yeah, that was a strange one all round.
2 of them were against Leicester as well, and they 2 of those games in charge of. Yeah.
Weird. So, I feel like both clubs would have been better off with their managers that they sacked going into next season as well. It feels like both teams maybe went up a little bit too soon. Like the Southampton sides would certainly benefit from another season in the Championship, getting used to a style of play and making it work before coming back up. Maybe it was just a bit too soon for both.
And it's such a step up. Like, this isn't easy going from the Championship to the Premier League. Like, this is really difficult. So we should expect to see what we're seeing now. And I think like the gulf that has been created now, I think this is just going to be something we see every season.
It's part of the financial disparity between the 2 leagues as well, because there was such a need from the top of the club for Southampton, for Leicester to come back up as soon as possible, that they sort of sacrificed long-term planning and long-term development for short-term games, just because the financial drop-off was so big, like Leicester facing potential points deductions, things like that. Now, clubs can't afford to wait and plan, maybe think a little 2 or 3 seasons ahead, and maybe stay down in the Championship. They have to get back up as soon as possible, because otherwise, you're going to have to be selling every squad player you have and completely resetting. So, yeah.
Do you think Leicester would have done better with Maresca in charge? Obviously, they couldn't stop them taking over Chelsea. Do you think they could have potentially stayed up?
It wouldn't have been worse, would they?
I wouldn't think so.
They'd have had a better chance probably, but again, they'd have had to done much different in the summer. Maybe with Maresca there, maybe they would have gone for, a completely different array of players and approached it differently. So potentially, but yeah, they'd have to outperform what they did do in the summer to quite a large degree, I think.
Yeah. Quality of the squad makes all the difference, doesn't it? I think it's far, far, far more important than managers, styles of play, anything like that. It's just the quality of the squad. Anyway, Sam's second bet is Brighton -1 in the Asian handicap market against Southampton. That's a 2.02 with a full unit on that. Scott, do you want to give us your second tip?
Yep, we're going Aston Villa versus Chelsea. Both teams to receive 2 cards and over 24.5 free kicks at 1.7. Michael Oliver, can we just leave it there? Should we go into a bit more detail?
Thank you for listening.
No, well, Oliver, obviously, he's a card maniac. 5.37 per game this season. 96 cards overall, 90 yellows, 6 reds. I think Kavanagh's the only referee who boasts a better cards per game ratio. But Michael Oliver, he's fresh off the Merseyside derby, isn't he? I think that's his last game. Yeah, it is his last game officiated. Obviously, we all saw how that unfolded. Scenes after the whistle, I think he's going to be keen to show the cards again. And these 2 teams do lend themselves nicely to cards. Chelsea, someone I've mentioned quite a few times in the podcast, their matches saw the most cards last season. That trend has continued this season. In fact, the numbers have gone up. Their matches have seen an average of 5.68 cards. Villa matches are averaging 5 cards, which is the 4th most in the Premier League. So we should see plenty of tackles flying in. and fouls leading the cards. So then we might as well go through the foul numbers as well. Villa matches the most in the Premier League with 24.85 fouls per game. Chelsea matches 24.08, the fifth most fouls, but it's worth noting that 365's market also includes offsides, and the market suggesting we should see about 4 offsides here. It's exactly the case. In the last time they played, there were 4 offsides. That game, there were actually 31 free kicks, and they picked up 2 cards each as Chelsea won 3-0. I'm hoping that this one's a little bit more competitive, and therefore we could see even more free kicks and more cards. The last time they met at this ground, the game finished 2-2. There were 33 free kicks, and the teams picked up 3 cards apiece. So there's potential for this to go higher. I think the 33 free kicks and the 3 cards apiece is about 6.5 at the moment, but we'll stick to the both teams to receive 2 and over 24.5 free kicks in the match. Michael Oliver, over to you.
I was just looking at Oliver's record in his last few matches he's refereed in the Premier League. So he's ref 4 since the turn of the year. Liverpool Man United on January 5th, 6 yellow cards, 1 penalty. Wolves Arsenal on the 25th of January, 2 yellow cards, 1 red card for a second yellow, and 1 straight red. Ipswich versus Southampton on February 1st, 3 yellows, nothing else. And then, as you said, Scott, the Merseyside derby, 6 yellows, 2 red cards in the match as well, or after the match, and one for a
the Arsenal Wolves game. The Arsenal Wolves game was ludicrous. That red card was ridiculous, wasn't it?
He's been quite sort of trigger happy in the last couple of weeks, hasn't he, Oliver?
Looking for excuses to hand them out. Okay, the 2 cards at the end of the derby with Liverpool, okay, he kind of had to dish those out, but he dished up 5 yellows in the first half, so he'd already decided he was going to make it a crazy game anyway. This game looks primed for cards, really. Villa Chelsea is normally a decent game as well. 2-2 in this fixture last season. Let's hope for something like that, where they both just kicking lumps out of each other.
Yeah. So as you say, you obviously delve into the data quite a lot and the stats for card picks. But I was wondering, how much do you think about the sort of state of the teams and what the game represents? Because obviously, as you said, it's a big match for Villa and Chelsea. Both sides kind of going for European spots this season. It'll be a big match to potentially decide those as well. So how much do you think about the sort of game state and what it means to both teams when you lean into, or when you decide to do a card or a foul pick?
I think it's probably more important than the data. Obviously, if I'm going to mention it on the podcast, I like to mention some of the numbers. I think it adds more weight to it. But a big game with a good referee in charge, it's just primed up for it, and nice to look back at the historical data between these 2 teams and back what you're saying up, right? I do think it's as simple as, if you've got a big game and a good referee, they do tend to blow over.
Interesting. Do you fancy picking a winner, or how do you think the game's going to go?
I think Villa will beat them. Villa look really good against Liverpool, barring the mistake for the Salah goal. And obviously Liverpool have their wobbles away, but Chelsea are wobbling at the moment as well. I think Villa, 3-1 Villa.
All right. Interesting. Scott's second pick is both teams to receive 2+ cards and over 24.5 free kicks in Aston Villa versus Chelsea. That's a 1.70 with a full unit on that. Let's get on with this week's pod treble. And Sam, do you want to kick us off with your select?
Yes, Mansfield versus Wrexham. I'm going for Wrexham 0.0 Asian handicap on the draw no bet line at 1.7. So Nigel Clough, Mansfield manager, spoke after their Lincoln defeat 3-0 during the week, which was interesting, I found interesting anyway. So he is fully aware of the situation the club is in right now at present. Clough said, at the moment, we cannot see where the next point comes from. Staying in this league for the first time in 35 years will be a major success. So looking at the current data surrounding Mansfield, they're bottom of the form table. They've lost 5 games in their last 6 matches. They're without a win in 6 going into the weekend, and they are staring towards relegation. No team has scored fewer than their 4 goals in 6 games, and 3 of those goals came in 1 match versus Blackpool. So they are really struggling at the minute. They've not won in 9 matches. Yet here on Saturday, we can get an automatic promotion chasing team on a draw no bet line. And like Southampton, this is a Mansfield side really struggling. Their objective is now to remain in this league So a draw against Wrexham on Saturday would be a brilliant point on the weekend, and that's a result that will return our stakes. So it looks pretty good from that point of view. Wrexham aren't as strong on the road compared to when they play at home. But after a defeat to Leyton Orient during the week, I would expect we see some kind of response here, a response that would be enough to at least avoid defeat at a minimum. So full stakes return in the event of a draw at 1.70. I think it makes a really good addition to the treble.
Yeah, good stuff. Sam, I don't usually push back on pod treble selections, but now that I'm giving my own one, I feel like I have to. Off the top of my head, I haven't delved into the data, but Wrexham are pretty bad away from home, aren't they?
I don't know if they're bad.
Is that still the case?
Their home form is really, really good. I wouldn't say they're bad away from home. They've lost 5 of 14 games away from home. But they've avoided defeat at least in 9 of 14 this season. But this is more a stance against Mansfield right now. They are performing miserably, sliding down the division. They had a pretty good start to the season, really, especially from like maybe October, November, December, playing pretty well, and then it's kind of fell off a cliff.
I think they've lost 8 of 9.
8 of 9.
Wrexham have won the last 3 away games across all comps as well, so a little bit more positive.
There we go. Yeah, no, they have picked up a little bit of late. I do stand slightly corrected on that, but yeah, looks good. Looks good. Sam's offering to the pod treble is Wrexham +0 when they take on Mansfield. That's a 1.70 with are you tracking it for full unit as well as a single?
Yeah, I will do, yeah.
Good stuff. Scott, over to you for your selection for the treble.
Yep, so similar thinking on the first angle to the last one. Man City versus Liverpool, both teams to receive a card this time, and Mo Salah to score or assist. City matches are not seeing a great deal of cards, the third fewest in the Premier League, but this is a bit of a rivalry, and the Cities obviously hold a rivalry. City and Liverpool a competitive rivalry in recent years. So a little look at the numbers, and both teams have received a card in the last 10 meetings between the teams at the Etihad with an average of 4.6 cards per game. So one each is very, very doable here. And that was all to try and get a boost on the Salah price of goal or assist. At the moment, Salah is just unplayable. He's scored and assisted in his last 2 away games. He's on course for 57 goal contributions in the Premier League. That's his current strike rate, obviously. The record is Shearer and Cole, who've got 47. But those were 42-game seasons, so the last time was Shearer back in 95 when Blackburn won the league. And Salah's set to smash those records, having played less games. He's just completely unplayable. City are obviously a difficult opponent, but that's never stopped Salah before. He's scored or assisted in his last 6 starts versus City. 3 assists and 5 goals during that period. And I think he's in the form of his life now, isn't he? So I really don't see how he doesn't get a direct goal contribution here. And adding a card each was a nice way to bump the price up to a more palatable 1.88. I think you could have got 1.61 on Salah to score assist by itself. But I'm happy to add the cards in to give it a nicer price.
Yeah, looks good. Sam, open it up to a discussion about City versus Liverpool. What are you expecting?
I actually don't know. I was speaking to Scott earlier, and yeah, I just find it I haven't got a bet on this game. I just find it a really tough betting heat, I suppose. An interesting one. City, I actually haven't looked, but I assume City have never been this big of a price in the Premier League under Pep at home. I imagine they're 2.80.
It's the biggest in any home game under Pep since they played Barcelona in 2016.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can understand that. Liverpool at 2.30. If this would have played 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have been all over Liverpool win. No doubt about it. But since then, against Newcastle, Manchester City looks like they were back to their best. I'm not saying they're back to their best now and that will continue, but just that game specifically, really quite good. Liverpool faltering in the last few games in terms of results, but workload and their opponents have to be factored into that. Goodison Park, Merseyside derby, and Villa away from home midweek after playing on the weekend. Like that's tough. It's worth noting as well, Liverpool have failed to win in any of the last 8 league games at the Etihad, drawing 4. Their last win in this fixture came in 2015. And yeah, that, like I said, that Newcastle performance keeps ringing round my mind, and it puts me off a pro-Liverpool stance at the prices. Both played on Wednesday. We're not sure if Erling Haaland plays here. John Stones was added to the list of absentees in Madrid. Kusanov played at right back. Liverpool can definitely hurt them. But overall, there's just a lot to unpack, a lot of variables that are quite tough to consider which way to go. So what I think I'll do is I'll probably wait for lineup, see what personnel Pep opts with here, and go from there. Maybe I'll take something in play, but right now, I don't have a bet. Really interesting fixture. Really interesting betting here at the prices. I like the 4 goals, but the line at 3.5, if this is more cagey intense than maybe most would imagine, and maybe both teams look tired, then 4 goals might get nowhere near. So tough one, Dan. Yeah, what are you thinking?
I would really like to back Man City here. I'm really feeling Man City at the moment. I think the Newcastle game, I think, is a bit of a turning point. Like we were speaking last week, Sam, I remember you asked, like, if I was Pep, which one would I want to win more? And I said the Newcastle game because I think it's a more important match for them in their season. Because City's focus now, well, City's focus last week was obviously the priority is finishing in the top 4 at this point. They're not at the level where they're going to be competing for trophies. They're not obviously, Premier League's long gone. Champions League was long gone last week. I think the first leg against Real Madrid made that pretty clear that they're not at that level at this point. You've just got to be realistic and pick your battles. So I think obviously the Haaland injury coming up in training affected things. I just think maybe Haaland was fit enough to come on the bench. I don't know anything about the injury, but I think if maybe there was a chance that he could have played, he probably would have if the game was more important. If City had gone in with a 1-goal advantage to Real Madrid and it was a round of 16 match or as a quarter-final, I feel like Haaland probably would have played through it. But I think they chose to hold him back for this because they knew that the top 4 and Champions League qualification for next season means more to the club than maybe placing the round of 16 when they'll probably come up against a better team and ultimately get eliminated from the Champions League. So, yeah, I think now City's priority is just getting into the top 4. And I feel like the player, Omar Mamouche, has come in, been a breath of fresh air. Nico Gonzalez, I think, against Newcastle, put in the sort of performance that Man City have been missing in the midfield since last season, even earlier in the season when Rodri was playing. Don't think he was putting in performances like Gonzalez did last week. So, they just looked a lot more settled. They just looked like City. They were stringing passes together in pretty long sequences. I think Pep talked about it after the match. We haven't seen City do that for a long period of time. We haven't seen them do that all season long. And yeah, all of a sudden, City can pass the ball. They look like City again. We've spoken about Liverpool's away form. They are having a bit of a wobble at the moment. You can't ignore that. So I think
still haven't been beaten away, have they? But it's like the draws are stacking up, aren't they? Obviously, it's offered Arsenal hope, isn't there? Some hope. I know injury-riddled Arsenal. So yeah,
I think
both
teams would probably take a draw at this point. So City plus half a goal, I think looks really good. I did want to do that as my pod offering, my pod treble offering, but because it's on the same game, it's locked. So I've had to go off the cuff here and just bring in another selection.
Oh, so this is a last minute jobby.
A last minute job, yeah. I didn't know it was going to be locked out, but of course it is because it's on the same game.
You don't help yourself, do you, Dan?
No, I don't.
As long as it's not backing cards on this Paphos versus Amoni game with Clement Turpin in charge, then no,
it's Mikel Merino to score 3 or more goals against West Ham. I'm joking. No, right. I've gone for a comfort pick here. I'm looking at the Arsenal game, Arsenal versus West Ham, on Saturday. Let's see, Saturday 3 p.m. So, watched them last week, and obviously Mikel Merino grabbed the headlines, but man of the match on the day was Ethan Nwaneri, the 17-year-old playing right wing. He's very, very good. He's very, very good, and Arsenal's attack at this point is so short. They are relying on, Leandro Trossard, decent player, 17-year-old Ethan Nwaneri, the on-loan Raheem Sterling, who is nowhere near the player he was kind of 2 or 3 years ago, and now the greatest striker in Premier League history, Mikel Merino. but it means that there is an even greater importance placed on Nwaneri's shoulders. And I think in that game against Leicester last week, he showed enough to convince me that he is the focal point for attacks at this point for Arsenal. Like every single good thing came through him. I think he got the official man of the match award on TNT, even though Marino came off the bench and scored 2 goals, which is quite rare. I'm looking at him to score or assist against West Ham, which looks a pretty decent price at 1.80 to add to the treble, bring the treble odds up to 5.76, which I think, considering off the cuff, is a pretty decent selection.
Yeah, nice.
I like the sound of that. I like
somebody
the sound
else
of it.
has to provide the contrasting opinion because, come at me, Sam.
Well, he didn't score. When did he? Well, he assisted last week, didn't he? He didn't score. I haven't got anything. He's in great form. Apart from that Newcastle EFL Cup second leg where Arsenal just failed to turn up, he really looks like he's hit his stride. Sterling can't start, so bring Marino on, which you think would favour the bet even more because he's going to be the type of player that brings in the wide players.
Yeah, Marino spoke after the match. He said that he's been speaking with Nwaneri off the pitch and saying that he just needs to cut inside onto his left foot and float crosses in because Marino is somebody who always times his runs quite well late into the box. He's got those flicking headers. Scored one last week. He scored one for Spain in the Euros against Germany, I think it was, in the quarters in last summer. Very good in the air. And Nwaneri's just got that, Lamine Yamal trademark floating in, inward floating cross from the right hand side on his left foot. He's just got it down. So I think,
it's high praise.
Yeah, I'm not sure about
technique wise. I'm not comparing the two players. I just mean the technique.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I think the only concern, Dan, is obviously there's a big game next Wednesday, so I'm not too enamoured with this West Ham defence. Like I could see Arsenal. I could see this being really quite comfortable. So maybe the only concern is that Arsenal get ahead in the game and there's a few changes made with Forest in mind. But other than that, he's in great form for a team that should dominate and should score goals. So looks all right to me.
Yeah,
6-1 to score header.
Wouldn't go against it.
This is Marino, obviously.
Marino,
Yeah. The one here is a score header.
Yeah.
Okay, pod treble. As I said, so if you put all 3 of those bets together into a treble, you get odds of 5.76, which we will be backing for a quarter of a unit. So, should we have a recap of the singles, please? Sam, start with you.
I am going for Swansea vs Blackburn. Blackburn 0.0 Asian handicap at 2.1. Brighton -1 Asian handicap at 2.02 away at Southampton. And also I'll take the Wrexham 0.0 Asian handicap pod treble pick for a unit at 1.7.
And Scott.
So first one, Newcastle versus Forest. Both teams to score over 22.5 shots in the match at 1.86, 1 unit on. And then Villa versus Chelsea. Both teams received 2+ cards and over 24.5 free kicks at 1.7, also a unit.
And if you put Sam's Wrexham +0 against Mansfield with Scott's Mo Salah to score or assist and both teams to receive a card in Man City versus Liverpool, with my Ethan Ranieri to score or assist against West Ham into a treble, you'll get odds of 5.76, which we will be backing for a quarter of a unit. If you are going to be using any of the tips from today's show, then please gamble responsibly, only bet where you can afford to lose. Thank you as ever to Sam Ingram.
Very much.
Thank you very much, Scott Thornton.
Thank you.
And thanks from me. We'll be back next week.